Hey, greetings and welcome. Jonathan here. It's great to have you here for this guided meditation and talk. My name is Jonathan Foust. Appreciate you making the time to be here. And as always, before we begin, a few thank yous and acknowledgements. First, to our mindful movement teacher for today, Rita Moran, and to Ray and Tara, who lead the mindful dialogue after this session. The whole Monday night experience starts at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time with Rita, who will guide you magnificently through mindful movement. And afterward, time to connect with like-minded people, facilitated by Ray Manioki and Tara Cassidy for mindful dialogue. Chance to share with others about your practice and about what you're noticing, and to talk about how awesome the talk was. So keep that in mind. Also, big thank you to Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo for producing this evening and streaming it to you. Also to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this class, all they do. To my friends at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington, which hosts Monday Night Meditation. And to let you know, I do have a mailing list monthly where there's a compendium of talks and my photography for the month. And a weekly to kind of give you a little heads up as to what's next. Also, just to let you know, once again, if you listened to me before, this is all offered freely. It's offered in the spirit that no one is denied access to these practices and these teachings. So it's available to all. And the way that happens is your support. So thank you for practicing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for anything you can do to help ensure we can get this out there. There are considerable costs that go into rolling this out every week. That being said, it's great to be here. It's great to share these practices with so many people around the planet. And I'm happy to be here. Finally, along the lines of shameless self-promotion, the next big thing, I'm going to be leading a day-long retreat on April 29th online, and it's called Every Breath is Sacred, and it's about the power of breath. It's one of the most amazing technologies we have to change your state. So it's about changing your state in really positive ways, but also how to bring breath into your meditation practice in ways that can really deepen things, enhance, all that good stuff. So that being said, let's do a short meditation to kind of help us get centered here. We are going to be talking about deconstructing pain. So I'm going to lead a little bit on the practice of what we call awareness of Vedana, or the feeling tone, as a way of dropping into our practice. So you might reach your arms up overhead, let out any sounds, kind of get the wiggles out, anything you need to do to get yourself appropriately relaxed and settled. When you're ready, you might begin to just to close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. And just notice right now where you feel the breath, and notice how intimately you can feel the breath wherever you notice it the most predominant right now. And just feel how this automatically draws your awareness inside. And you have the word concentration, but I love the word absorption. Letting awareness get absorbed in this feeling of the breath. And you might like to explore lengthening your inhalation just a little bit. And on the out-breath, just exhaling, letting the breath fall away. If you like to tweak it a little bit, you can breathe in through the nose and then exhale through the mouth. Just for a few rounds. And on each out-breath, just asking inside, what could soften, what could relax, what could let go? If it's helpful, you can stay with the breath, this sense of lengthening the breath and softening on the out breath. Or if you like, you can let your breath be completely relaxed, effortless, free-flowing, And notice how intimately you can feel from the inside the muscles of your face. As if you could scan through the muscles of the face. Notice if you could let your face relax. Let any expression drop away. And if you like, you might now bring your attention to the root of your tongue. And just notice if you can identify the root of your tongue and just hold your attention there as you feel from the inside out, allowing a sense of relaxation, or maybe a sense of like spreading sensation through the tongue, through the inside of the mouth. You may feel your jaw beginning to relax. Feel the lower jaw beginning to feel a little more suspended from the skull. And for the next few breaths, just keeping your attention in the inside of the mouth and the tongue and the lips. Just track anything that might move or shift or change as you simply notice what you're feeling inside. Now you might bring your attention to the backs of your hands. How intimately can you sense through the skin on the backs of your hands right now? Is it possible to feel the space inside the thumbs? And you can't do this by trying harder. There's a sense of simply directing your awareness there and then opening into this realm of receptivity and feeling. Could you soften your palms? Could you relax your fingers? And for the next, say, 3 breaths, how much can you soften and feel from the inside out here at the palms? And you may notice there's this direct correlation between how intimately you relax and how intimately you can feel. And can you sense or feel here any pulse or tingling? Any subtle vibration of energy? Now you might direct your attention to your belly. And if you'd like to get specific, you can bring your awareness about an inch or two below your navel and then in toward the center and the core of your abdomen. And again, just sense if you can rest your attention here or kind of park your attention here and simply relax and feel. What could soften here? Is there anything that's changing? And you may notice the subtlety of the rising with the in-breath in the belly. The subtlety of the out-breath, the falling. And again, any sense of sensation moving or shifting or spreading through the abdomen. And sensing now from the inside out, the soles of the feet and the heels. Again, resting your attention here, just to relax and feel. And what do you notice? A sense of the space inside the body, maybe any tingling or vibration or pulse or sense of aliveness. And then if you would, as you sense through the whole body, explore somewhere where you feel pleasant sensation. Somewhere inside that has a quality of enjoyment. It might be the palms of the hands or the inside of the mouth. And if you can't find something pleasant, just find someplace neutral. It might be a little bit different than your regular practice. And sense what it's like to rest your attention here. And relax and feel and allow yourself to really take in the quality of either pleasant or maybe neutral sensation. And explore over the next few minutes what it's like to deeply relax here and to observe without judgment and to feel. And when your mind wanders, just gently bring it back. In this remaining minute or so, can you sense or feel who you are as the one who is aware? And is it possible to feel or to register the direct sensations inside? Relaxing and feeling and observing. Sensing your capacity to observe how intimately you can feel, and your capacity to let things be. And as you're ready, you can gently deepen and lengthen your breath. Let your head drift a little bit to the left and right. And take some time to let your body move and stretch in any way that feels good. I have to say, I'm relieved coming into this talk. I've noticed over the many years that I offer Dharma talks that if I'm giving a talk on working with depression, I'll feel depressed that week. If I'm giving a talk on anger, something's going to come up that triggers, anger and aversion in me. So I had decided for a while I was only going to give talks on love and joy and compassion. But then inevitably if I'm giving a talk on compassion, then I get aware of what's between me and compassion. This talk is on deconstructing pain, and I'm really happy to say that I've been feeling great this week. But I have been reflecting on pain. And we all experience pain. Pain is coming for you. And thinking about times when I've experienced the most pain, and I think probably one of them was probably when I was a baby, about 8 or 9 years old, and my younger brother and I at that time we were fascinated with this practice of trying to kick each other in the butt when the other person wasn't noticing. It was a source of great amusement to us. And one time, having caught unawares, I was in the living room picking something up. My younger brother noticed this position of vulnerability. And I think he had about 30 feet to get a running start. I admire his force. I admire his timing, but I don't admire his placement because he kicked me a little bit low and a little bit forward. And it was one of the most intense pains I've ever felt in my life. Everything kind of turned white. I had trouble breathing. I remember trying through my breaths to kind of get out the words, "I will kill you." And that was one of the most intense experiences of pain that I've had. But I could go through my litany. I've had lots of experiences of pretty intense pain. I had dengue fever in Africa, in West Africa, where I was in the Peace Corps. It's known as break bone fever because it literally feels like someone has been beating you with lead pipes all night. That was no fun. I got in a motorcycle accident on my dirt bike where the metal peg scraped down the length of my shin. That was no fun. Working on farm equipment, almost losing a finger. I can go on. But I think it's just safe to say we all experience pain. And I'd like to share some specific strategies here that you might find helpful, or if you know of someone who's dealing with physical difficulties right now, I'm hoping this might be of some help. There are 4 things I'd like to talk about here. First is the pain response, and this whole teaching of the second arrow. It hurts when we feel pain, but it hurts even more when we add kind of unskillful processing around it. The second thing I'd like to explore with you is what it means to kind of have tea with your discomfort. There's some really interesting stuff I've heard recently about figuring out your pain recipe that has been really helpful for me. I'd also like to talk about the art of decoding the messages that come from your body. And a little more, which is kind of a continuation from last talk on how you can change the frame of awareness when you are investigating an experience of pain. This particular technique has some contraindications, but it can be really, really powerful and really, really helpful. So I'll be sharing a couple stories, leading some experiences, and so forth. As it has been said, it's not so much what's happening, but your relationship to what's happening. And this leads us to this fundamental teaching in Buddhist psychology of the second arrow. And that is to say, not adding anything to what is here. So the Buddha allegedly had asked his students, when you're struck by an arrow, does it hurt? The answer, of course, was yes. Then he went on to say, if you are feeling the arrow and then you start asking yourself, I need to know who the person was who shot this arrow. I need to know why this person shot the arrow. I need to know. Are you not adding more pain? And the answer, of course, is yes. We have a primary and secondary response to stimulus. And this has all been identified. But the Buddha noticed this tendency a long, long time ago when he talked about the arrows. The first arrow hits us when a painful event occurs, and it hurts. The second arrow is our reaction to the event. And all that does is add to your pain. So my primary experience of pain through my life has been chronic migraines. And I'm really happy to say they have lessened dramatically in the last couple of years. Usually when I have a migraine, my mind goes into something like, what did I do to cause this? How long is this going to last? What did I do to bring this on? What if I try visualization? What if I try breathing technique? What if I try moving? What if I try being perfectly still? How am I to get through tomorrow? Tomorrow's going to be impossible. This is the second arrow. It's everything I add to the pain that's already there. And this is one of the keys to working with unpleasant sensation. So there is a story, and I believe this is from the Pali Canon. It's the story of a very, very sick monk whose body was falling apart, basically. And as other monks went to visit him, they noticed how radiant he was. He just had an aliveness and a radiance about him. And they were stunned. How could he do this? When he was obviously in so much discomfort and his body was essentially decomposing. And his response was this, quoting the Pali Canon, "I remain focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, aware, and mindful, putting away greed and distress with reference to the world." Okay, so let's break that down. I remain focused on the body in and of itself. I'm just aware of pure, raw sensation. I remain ardent and aware, like focused and aware and mindful, non-judging, putting away greed and distress with reference to the world. So in essence, what the monk was practicing was everything I was not with my migraine. What's tomorrow going to be like? Oh my God, how did this happen? What did I do? All the mental activity, removing that, just being with pure raw sensation. Now, of course, as you can imagine, I've tried every technique that I know of, and a lot I've made up, on how to work with chronic pain in my migraines. And sometimes, if I completely drop any story whatsoever, if I drop any fear around what tomorrow is going to be like or how long this is going to happen, it's actually okay. It's just sensation happening without a story. So simple, so easy to say, and so difficult to practice. Being with sensation without the story and coming in direct contact without any label of good or bad is this incredible possibility of freedom in the midst of strong sensation. So if you like, let's try this. And I'm not going to ask you to generate any pain here. If you like, you can close your eyes. And again, if you're driving, don't close your eyes unless you're an autopilot in a Tesla. If you would, with your eyes closed, take 3 slow, deep breaths. Now, if you're feeling some discomfort inside, you might bring your attention to wherever you're feeling discomfort. Only if it feels okay for you. Otherwise, you might either explore where you feel sensation the most predominant right now, or just bring your attention into your right hand. And now let yourself just explore. I'm going to read this little sutra back to you. I remain focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, aware, and mindful, putting away greed and distress with reference to the world. Now, for the next 30 seconds, is it possible to feel this sensation without any judgment, without any label, without any sense of good or bad? If you like, you can deepen your breath. And if you like, you can open your eyes. Now, you may have noticed that that was difficult, which it can be. And you may have noticed maybe something kind of shifted a little bit inside. But it's a very helpful thing just to keep in your quiver of meditation tools. When you're feeling strong sensation, is it possible to keep your body in and of the body itself? Ardent, aware, and mindful. That is to say, focused and aware, putting away greed and distress for the world. No story. Now, I've explored for myself my relationship to pain, and it's really helpful, I think, to really reflect on what is the conditioning that you have around your relationship to pain or unpleasant sensation. I read something years ago about how different cultures represent the pain that they're feeling to their doctors. I couldn't find it. And maybe it got scrubbed because it was making some really strong generalizations about people. But I know from those around me how we put our own twist on the reality of sensation. One person I know came from a really tough background. You know, he was a fighter. And for him, and he's now elderly, projecting strength is really important to him. And he's recently had some health issues. And his kids found out that when he was meeting with a doctor, he totally downplayed his pain, which was considerable. So they weren't prescribing the kind of meds that he really needed. And he didn't want to look weak while talking to the nurses and doctors. And another friend, just on the other side of the pendulum, his dad does the opposite. He went to see his doctor, and he shared this with his son. He said, it could just be a headache, but it could be a brain tumor. So his dad has this tendency to amplify the drama to such a point that now actually kind of crying wolf is sort of followed by eye rolls. I came from a culture that says, if it's still there in 3 days, let's talk. I've got a lot of Germanic farm culture in my background, you know, pretty much just rub some dirt in it and get back to work. And my mother, when my brothers and sister were in pain, my mother, who was a nurse actually, employed a strategy of ignoring us. Her mother was also a nurse. She came from the Schulholz family, a long tradition of tough German farmers. And my mother would say that I don't want my kids to associate getting sick as a way to get attention. So as a result, I really don't like getting sick. And for me, I live a lifestyle that's about cultivating optimal health. But it's also about avoiding getting sick. As you can imagine, for me, getting sick is about being exiled. So it's interesting. Were your parents or your primary caretakers, were they kind of hypochondriacal around pain? Were they alarmed if you mentioned anything? Did you get attention? Did you get warmth? Were you ignored? And how do you react to pain now? My understanding is that your experience of pain is about the mind taking in all factors. There's the sensation of pain, or the anticipation of pain. But then there's all of your conditioning, your past experiences, what you've observed, your anxiety level. Your brain is a prediction machine. And so your mind is completely under the influence of the second arrow. When you feel pain, you're in for a powerful mental ride. And you'll watch your mind moving into one of those 5 classic states, either moving into anger, aversion, judgment, blame, or your mind desperately trying to disassociate from the body, or your mind caught in worry, fear, anxiety, hypervigilance, or your mind just wanting to numb out, go to sleep, or your mind caught in doubt or self-criticism. Or so it can be one of those or all 5 of those at once. It's sort of like, this is the second arrow. There's good news here, and that is that mindfulness can change your relationship to pain. Just as I am more mindful of my conditioning around pain, I can lean into a little bit. I have this propensity or tendency to withdraw when I'm in pain. Or when I feel something coming on, I get worried, I get anxious. I tend to prepare for going into my cave. And the question becomes, can I be present to the reality of here and now without adding a second arrow? Or can I actually sit and have tea with this physical pain? Rather than trying to push it away or numb myself or disassociate or blow off anger, can I possibly get more familiar with pain? My particular pain and my conditioning around it. And this is kind of exciting because this points toward new possibilities rather than the same thing over and over and over again. I've had the opportunity to have tea with my migraines over the years, but then I realized, you know what? Not really. It's more around, can I learn more about these so I can nuke them and they'll never come back? Big difference between having tea and having tea with a club held behind your back. I've felt a fair bit of desperation around my migraines, as you can imagine. They're paralyzing from 1 to 4 days. I'm just out. I just have to withdraw. It's really changed the way I interact with the world because I have to have some kind of self-preservational thing going on here. When I'm in them, I'm kind of caught in the bargaining stuff. I try to figure it out. I try different techniques, and I'd say 98% of the time, I just have to give up. Nothing works. I just have to kind of ride it through. Now, when you're investigating migraines, there's a classic way of working with migraines called identifying your triggers. So what might have kicked this off? But I ran into a better description. And again, I'm referring back here, I mentioned this last talk about a really wonderful conversation that Ezra Klein had on his podcast with a pain psychologist. And she called it identifying your recipe for pain. And it's the recipe that kind of sets you up for your experience of pain. I could never find just one trigger. I realized it was a couple, but then I realized, well, if I see it as a recipe, what precedes a migraine is usually I'm feeling stressed about something. And when I'm stressed, I pay less attention to my body. And I'm one of those people who stops eating and drinking when I'm stressed. So dehydration, appetite goes away, my blood sugar crashes. And then because I feel kind of weak, usually my posture falls apart. I tend to kind of distract myself with reading, which makes my posture even worse. And then I get this neck pain at the base of my skull. And then it's all over. This pain psychologist talked about, for her pain recipe was feeling stress, stopping exercise, her posture falling apart, her diet falling apart, and then kind of emotionally noticing that she'd get in lots of fights with her boyfriend. So when those factors, that recipe came together, stress, no exercise, bad posture, bad diet, and then getting in fights, boom, she ends up in pain. So the interesting question is, what is your recipe for pain? What is it that sets you up? What are your stress patterns? What are your behaviors? If your good friends were to kind of observe you when you're under stress, what behaviors would they identify? How does your relationship to food and drink and exercise shift when you're under stress? Your relationship to sleep. Getting familiar with your recipe for pain can actually allow you to unwind your recipe for pain. For me, I'm more aware of my stress levels now and how my patterns of internalizing stress. I have found that regularity really, really works for me because I tend to skip meals. If I can skip a meal, I'll skip a meal. So locking in the nutrition is really, really good for me. Paying attention to sleep, really, really important. Exercise, really, really important. I'm 6'5", I have an extra vertebrae and a long spine, so keeping my posture aligned. That has made all the difference. Building in these little regular things where the stress doesn't build up has made a big, big difference for me. And the question is, what would be your unwinding recipe? How might you begin to identify what sets you up for pain? And what are the precautionary things you could do? This is all part of mindfulness. It's kind of the same in meditation. You know, when your mind really, really slows down and you find yourself caught in some big distraction or some strong emotional state, to really ask yourself, so what thoughts preceded this stress and suffering I'm experiencing right now? That slowing down and paying attention, getting familiar with investigation is really powerful. I've noticed when I go through times of procrastination, something I know I need to do, but I'm not taking action. When I really slow down, when I really investigate what's going on, usually that procrastination activity is preceded by a thought. What I'm working on might not work out, it might fail. And so from that thought, this might fail or this might not be very good. Oh, I just click into something distracting. So taking time to investigate and have tea with your pain can have a lot of fruit. It certainly has for me. And now the interesting thing is, pain is coming for you sooner or later if you're not feeling a lot of pain and discomfort. And learning how to be with it is truly the key. Sometimes it's helpful to back off. Sometimes it's helpful to lean in. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But a big part of the practice here is about learning how to listen to the body itself. You may have heard that phrase, if you have kids, what you suppress, your kids will express. It's just that way with pain as well. What you suppress will be expressed. I thought about this and I was reminded of a friend of mine, Jim. who was a farmer. He was on a farm next to the farm I lived and worked on through college. I was on a 1,000-acre farm. We had about 500 hogs. I was really, really into Midwest agriculture for many, many years. I was a livestock manager, and Jim was his farm was up the road just a little bit, almost bordering our farm, and he was a tough dude. He was estranged from his wife and family. He lived alone, although occasionally he'd park his girlfriend's car on our farm in case he was being investigated. Kind of talked out of the side of his mouth. He never looked you in the eye. He smoked constantly. He always had a 6-pack of RC Cola on his tractor or in his truck. And though he had this really tough exterior, and again, he never really look at you, talk out of the side of his mouth. He really enjoyed coming to our farm, and he loved razzing us. And we were these weird vegetarian meditators running this high-tech farm, and we were always on him around his habits, and we fussed over him a good bit, which I think he liked, but he never changed. Over the course of those years, he had 4 heart attacks. One morning he called up saying he thought he was having a 5th and asked us to take us to the hospital. And with my friend driving and me attending to him in the back seat, he died on the way to the hospital. And at the funeral, I was touched, as gruff and tough as this guy was. There were people who knew him and loved him, his family, his kids, and this whole life that he didn't get to live. He wasn't that old a guy. There's a brilliant function of pain. It's an early warning system. It wants your attention. And the question becomes, can you decode what it's telling you? And my friend Jim had lots of signals. And he elected not to listen too carefully. And as a result, he died quite prematurely. This inner listening is, to my mind, is kind of an art and a science. And it's really helpful, especially if you catch those early symptoms. As I mentioned, I can be a little hypochondriacal around getting sick because I just dislike it so much. So I've kind of like tuned in. I have this whole technique. If I feel a cold coming on, I kind of pause and I kind of go into this sort of inner listening dialogue with it. And so I'll ask, okay, so what's this all about? And usually I get a sense of like, okay, I'm feeling run down. They have these symptoms beginning to arise. And then I ask, okay, if I ignored this, what would happen? And then usually I have a sense of like, oh, this would be a cold, this would be a flu. And then I ask, if I treated this right now as if it was full blown, could we turn this around? And then I usually get this felt sense in the body saying, yeah, you can turn it around. And if I'm listening, which is not all the time, and I stop and I get some extra rest, or I have some tea, or I go to bed early, or I do something as if I had the cold, and I catch it early, quite often it turns around. Sometimes I miss it completely. I'm just too absorbed in where I'm going. I'm too identified with my mind, and I don't have the patience. And then the pain signals get stronger and stronger, and then I'm stuck. As I've explored for myself and as I've explored with other people, when you really ask what the body wants, it wants attention. And the message usually is slow down. For me and for many people. So, Zen Pop Quiz. If you like, you can close your eyes just for a moment. This one's real quick. If you close your eyes and you feel your breath, Is there a sense of what your body needs or wants right now? Is it thirsty? Is it hungry? Does it need rest? Does it need to move? And just for a moment, just sense that inner quality of listening. What I find is, for myself and for many people, we don't listen to the body. The mind has its agenda. The body's doing its very, very best to support and serve us in our intentions. But that brilliant function of pain is to get you to slow down and to listen. And if we can do that a little proactively, it can be super, super helpful. And this is where a meditation practice comes in, because you are slowing down and you are sensing. And it's important to recognize that we have different pain sensitivities. I have a good friend who's now in his late 60s who will just mention quite casually he went out for an 8-mile run with friends. And I'm like, how do you do that? Turns out that he has some gene which is rare, that increases his pain tolerance quite a bit. And a lot of people who do ultra marathons kind of have this gene, and he's run 50 and 100-mile races. Knowing your sensitivity can be really, really helpful, because pain tends to show up in a couple ways. There's kind of the acute pain, something that's sort of immediate, that it's not going to last really, really long. But if you listen, chances are your body's going to say, slow down and rest and heal. And there's something so magical about that. If you break your arm, they put it in a cast and they tell you to rest. And somehow your body knows how to heal. Your body knows how to knit the broken bones together. It's stronger than before, quite often. With chronic pain, and again, I'm not a pain expert, but just in my understanding, when there's chronic pain, it's usually the opposite. It's not so much about just rest and rest and rest. You actually may find it helpful to explore movement and activity gradually, very, very gradually, starting where you are, little by little by little. I saw this when my mother broke her pelvis in 2 places, and I think kind of obliterated her heel. She elected not to explore the movement. She elected not to explore those edges with, all the painful physical therapy, and it impacted the rest of her life. So starting where we are and then finding ways to engage with it is going to be unique for each of us. Sometimes the message from your body is, don't move, just rest and heal and trust. Other times you need to decode those pain sensations, because moving through the discomfort can be really helpful. I have a good friend who's a physical therapist, and he leads a class in functional movement. And basically, he's teaching people how to get up from a chair, how to get up from the floor. And there was one woman in particular who had a lot of mobility issues, had some weight issues, and she was really just stuck in a chair. And she got inspired somehow to do this class, and they basically spent all their time practicing how to get up from the floor, which she had never been able to do, and it took her weeks to be able to do this. Later, she told him this story, and I just get choked up when I think about this. She was with her family and her grandchildren at the beach, and they're all kind of hanging out. And at the end of the day, they were packing up and getting ready to go. And she stood up and got her things, and she looked up. The entire family was standing there looking at her, and some with tears in their eyes, because it had been years since she had been able to do that. John Kabat-Zinn writes this about pain. He says, from the perspective of mindfulness, nothing needs fixing. Nothing needs to be forced to stop or change or go away. And he's making the case here for awareness of sensation without the overlay of thoughts. He says it is only awareness itself that can balance out all of our various inflammations of thought and the emotional agitations and distortions that accompany the frequent storms that blow through the mind, especially in the face of chronic pain situation. We tend to freeze around pain, particularly chronic pain. And if you really have tea with your pain, when you really engage into it, magically, you can bring awareness in where awareness wasn't flowing before. So another way to say that is where the attention goes, the energy flows. So I'd like to share another technique here. Just checking on her. Ooh, God, time. I'm going to share another technique with you. Awareness changes how you relate to pain. Sometimes we explored before the zones of sensation, unpleasant, pleasant, and neutral, and how if you keep your attention in the pleasant sensations, you get this sense of I can bear the unpleasant. It's really, really helpful practice. Sometimes it's really helpful to kind of zoom out and just feel your pain, but also imagine the space beyond the furthest stars, and you kind of get a sense of perspective. This practice is about actually zooming in to the sensations. And we're going to have time just for a minute or two of this before we close. But a number of years ago, in my effort to defy sickness, old age, and death, I was chasing men much younger than me around a field of grass playing ultimate frisbee. And in this really impressive move, impressing myself, I leaped in the air, I caught the frisbee, I landed on my right leg, I twisted my body, and I released the frisbee downfield. Beautiful. No one really noticed but me. But I did notice also that my right knee wasn't functioning after that. I tried ignoring it for a few days, rub dirt on it, keep going. And then I found out I'd actually torn my cruciate ligament. So I'd heard of this practice. Joseph Goldstein talks of this practice called connecting the dots. And here's how it works. Rather than zooming out, you zoom in. And you explore, if you can, at the microscopic level, the unpleasant sensations. So we have the sense of, oh, this hurts. But if you look in and you look where exactly is the unpleasant sensation, I couldn't find a precise location. It kept moving, it kept shifting. I realized the unpleasant sensation was not solid. It actually had space inside it. So this practice, it has got a couple caveats. It requires concentration. Might not be good with trauma. And you really have to keep asking yourself, can I be with it? Because it might feel like it's too much. So I have just a few minutes, but I would love to give you a little taste of this. If you like, you can close your eyes, and if you're experiencing any unpleasantness inside, you can use this as your anchor. If that feels like it's too much, choose some sensation where it feels predominant, or just choose one part of your body, maybe the right thumb. Just feel the right thumb. And with your eyes closed, take a few moments and begin to just relax and soften. And identify either the unpleasant sensations or the most predominant sensations. And if you can, continue to zoom in as close as you can. Imagine a microscopic or even an atomic level. And what do you notice? What do you find? Can you find any discrimination between the unpleasant and the pleasant and neutral sensations? Where does the unpleasant begin and the pleasant begin? Take just another 30 seconds. And then if you like, you can deepen your breath. So I'm curious as to what you noticed. If you were able to kind of imagine or feel the atomic or like the subatomic experience, you might notice here something really interesting. And it points to the three characteristics of reality that you become aware of impermanence. How this something that can look solid is actually changing. It's actually alive. Connecting the dots almost. At times you might notice that. You might notice, again, the second characteristic of reality of stress and suffering and dissatisfaction, that your relationship to what's changing is going to determine your stress level. If you can let it change, it's fine. If you're resisting, you feel a little rope burn. The third is it's not personal. It's just happening. And it really points towards something else, which is this question of what is actually solid in this world. When we're in fear, things look solid. Pain looks solid. It takes tremendous courage to turn your attention toward that which you fear. Turning toward physical pain and emotional pain, mental turmoil, requires real courage. And it's important to remember that when it feels like it's too much, listen to that. Sometimes it's really helpful. Let it know you see it. Let it know another time when the conditions are different. Your intention is to be with it. And then you might just withdraw your attention, turn somewhere else. I feel like we are drawn here to this life and to this practice to explore what it means to be truly free. And when we have the wherewithal, which is certainly not all the time, to really turn toward and investigate physical, emotional, mental pain, we can find sometimes it's a doorway into profound insight. I hope you found this helpful. I'll be sharing a little more about some other strategies for working with pain that I hope might be helpful for you or helpful for someone that you know and love. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and many, many blessings in your practice and in everything you feel called to.